Hi there, boys and girls. I have a special friend with me today to read a book to you. This is my friend, Mrs. Bunny, and Mrs. Bunny and I are going to read you a story about bunnies today. This is the tale of Peter Rabbit. It's a very old book and a very old story, but I think it's fun and Mrs. Bunny likes it. So Mrs. Bunny's going to get comfortable here on my lap and we're going to read to you. So, this is the tale of Peter Rabbit. Once upon a time, there were 4 little rabbits, and their names were Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. They lived with their mother in a sandbank underneath the root of a very big fir tree. Now, my dears, said Mrs. Rabbit one morning, you may go into the fields or down the lane, but don't go into Mr. McGregor's garden. Your father had an accident there. He was put in a pie by Mrs. McGregor. Oh dear. I think they should stay out of Mr. McGregor's fields, don't you? Or out of his garden. I do. So there's Mrs. Rabbit. She's telling them to be very good, but don't go into Mr. McGregor's garden. Now run along and don't get into mischief. I'm going out. Then old Mrs. Rabbit took a basket and her umbrella and went through the woods to the baker's. She bought a loaf of brown bread and 5 currant buns. Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail, who were good little bunnies, went down the lane to gather blackberries. But Peter, who was very naughty, ran straight to Mr. McGregor's garden and squeezed under the gate. His mommy told him not to do that, didn't she? He should have listened to his mommy. But he ran straight to the garden and squeezed under the gate. And what did he do? He started eating Mr. McGregor's food that he was growing in his garden. First he ate some lettuce and some beans. Then he ate some radishes. What's he eating here? Is he eating carrots? Bunnies like carrots, don't they? Well, he was eating Mr. McGregor's carrots. And then he got a tummy ache. And he went to look for some parsley to see if that would make his tummy feel better. But round the end of a cucumber frame, who should he meet? But Mr. McGregor. Mr. McGregor was on his hands and knees planting young cabbages. But he jumped up and ran after Peter, waving a rake and calling out, "Stop, thief!" Peter was most dreadfully frightened. He was so scared. He rushed all over the garden, for he had forgotten the way back to the gate. He lost one of his shoes among the cabbages and the other shoe among the potatoes. Do you see his shoe? But after losing them, he ran on all 4 of his legs and went faster so that he might have gotten away altogether. But he ran into a net and he got his buttons caught on the net. It was a blue jacket with brass buttons and it was quite new, but he got it caught on the net. Peter gave himself up for lost and shed great big tears, but his cries were overheard by some friendly birds who flew to him and asked him to please try harder to get out of the net. See, he's stuck. Mr. McGregor came up with a basket and he wanted to put it on top of Peter, but Peter wriggled out just in time, leaving his jacket behind. See it here? Mr. McGregor was going to put a basket over him to catch him. And he rushed into the tool shed and jumped into a can. But the can was full of water. Do you see down here? It was a watering can. Mr. McGregor was quite sure that Peter was somewhere in the tool shed, perhaps hidden underneath a flower pot. He began to turn them over carefully, looking under each. But all of a sudden, Peter, achoo, sneezed. Mr. McGregor was after him in no time and tried to put his foot on him to stop him. But Peter jumped out of a window, upsetting 3 plants. The window was too small for Mr. McGregor, and he was tired of running after Peter anyway, so he went back to work. So Peter got away from Mr. McGregor. I think Peter probably should have listened to his mommy, don't you think? I think his mommy knew that there would be some problems if he went into Mr. McGregor's garden, but Peter was very naughty and he went anyway. Peter sat down to rest. He was out of breath and so scared, and he didn't know where he was. And he was very wet from sitting in that can. After a time, he began to wander about, hippity-hop, not very fast, and looking all around. He found a door in a wall, but it was locked, and there was no room for a fat little bunny to squeeze underneath. An old mouse was running in and out over the stone doorstep, carrying peas and beans to her family in the woods. Peter asked her the way to the gate, but she had such a large pea in her mouth that she could not answer. She only shook her head at him. Peter began to cry. Then he tried to find his way straight across the garden, but he became more and more lost. Presently, he came to a pond where Mr. McGregor filled his watering cans. A white cat was staring at some goldfish. Do you see the kitty cat? And the kitty cat's watching the fish. Do you see the fish down here? Peter thought maybe he shouldn't talk to the kitty cat. He had heard about cats from his cousin, little Benjamin Bunny. So he went back toward the tool shed, but suddenly, quite close to him, he heard the noise of a hoe. Scritch, scratch, scratch, scritch. Peter scuttered underneath the bushes, but as nothing happened, he came out and climbed up on a wheelbarrow and peeped over. The first thing he saw was Mr. McGregor. He was hoeing onions. His back was turned toward Peter, and beyond him, look, it's the gate. That's what Peter was looking for so he could get back home. Peter got down very quietly off the wheelbarrow and started running as fast as he could along a straight walk behind some blackcurrant bushes. Mr. McGregor caught sight of him at the corner, but Peter did not care. He slipped underneath the gate and was safe at last in the woods outside the gate. Mr. McGregor hung up his little jacket and the shoes for a scarecrow to frighten the birds. So he made a scarecrow out of Peter's jacket and shoes that he lost. What do you think his mommy's going to say when she finds out he lost his jacket and his shoes? Would your mommies be happy about that? No. Peter never stopped running or looked behind him till he got home to the big fir tree. He was so tired that he flopped down upon the nice soft sand on the floor of the rabbit hole and shut his eyes. His mother was busy cooking. She wondered what he had done with his clothes. It was the second little jacket and pair of shoes that Peter had lost that week. I am sorry to say that Peter was not feeling very well during the evening. He had a tummy ache. He was feeling icky. But his mommy put him to bed and made him some tea, and she gave it to Peter. 1 tablespoon to be taken at bedtime. And that was for his tummy ache because he ate all that stuff he shouldn't have. But Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail had bread and milk and blackberries for supper. So what do you think? Do you think Peter Rabbit should have listened to his mommy? Mrs. Bunny, what do you think? Yeah, she thinks Peter Rabbit should have listened to his mommy. But Peter Rabbit was very naughty, wasn't he? So I think we all need to remember to listen to our mommies. If our mommies tell us not to go someplace, we shouldn't go there. And we should probably try not to lose our clothes and our shoes, right? All right, boys and girls, until next time, bye.